Support for the Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you in part by University of Idaho, Idaho's only Carnegie R1 classified research university. Our Carnegie R1 designation recognizes the discoveries we make that help our forests thrive. It means we're creating more doctors and doing real research to strengthen cybersecurity for Idaho businesses, our energy sector, and every Idahoan. More at go.uidaho.edu/Idaho-is-Idaho.
Laws are being drafted and debated at the State House right now. Laws that will likely affect your everyday life as an Idahoan. The Connector helps you keep up with the legislative session with clear reporting, local context, and explanations that make it all make sense. Stay connected to the State House with the Connector, Idaho Daily News. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Cadet. This is Idaho Matters. A new debut mystery opens in the back seat of a New York City taxi cab. The book, The Midnight Taxi, follows a Sri Lankan American driver who becomes the main suspect in a murder. But it's actually funny, it's sharp, and it's grounded in the realities of the justice system. And author Yosha Gunnesara is joining us now to talk more. Yosha, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Yosha, give us a quick synopsis of your novel.
Absolutely. So the novel follows Sriwati Pereira, a New York City taxi cab driver who picks up a passenger, and when she gets to his destination, he's been murdered. So it's very much a locked cab mystery. She must, with her public defender, investigate her own case across all 5 boroughs of New York City in search of the real killer before it's too late.
So, okay, let's start with Siri. Am I saying the main character's name right?
Okay. You are.
I have to say she's pretty funny and but very much under pressure. So I'm curious about how you developed her character. I mean, how did she come to you, and what made you want to put her behind the wheel of a taxi cab?
Yeah, so by day I am a lawyer, and at the time that I started writing this novel, I was a public defender in Manhattan. I was leaving night court, which is where we represent New Yorkers accused of crime, around 1 a.m. I got into a yellow cab that was waiting to pick up passengers from night court. And the cab driver said he always waits there because he loves to hear about what happens in court and about true crime. And it was this rare moment of human connection that you have with a stranger in the city that doesn't often happen in New York City when you're rushing to your next thing. And in this case, rushing to get home and back to bed. But it made me very curious about the lives of these essential New York City service workers that often go unnoticed. And so the seed of the idea was really planted there, but then I started to notice cab drivers everywhere. I started to notice them in taxi stands. I started to notice them at restaurants. And I, at the time, was also dating my now husband, whose father was a taxi cab driver and whose grandfather was also a taxi cab driver. So I felt that there was this story that the universe was almost begging for me to tell about taxi cab drivers. And I was very fortunate to be able to also include a lot of my culture and heritage as a Sri Lankan American, but also serious issues about the criminal legal system that I really wanted to present in an accessible and, as you said, comedic way to keep readers engaged.
So how much of series like Fear and Frustration in the book really reflects, I would think, maybe things that you've actually seen in real life?
It's absolutely based in real life. I've pulled things that I've seen when I've represented hundreds of New Yorkers as a public defender. I currently represent people who have been wrongfully accused of crimes that they didn't commit and are serving, life sentences for crimes they didn't commit. And so it is really grounded in reality. And I know some people will read the book and say it can't possibly be that bad, but there is really a lot of disadvantage to individuals who are ensnared in the criminal legal system, especially when they don't have the same resources that maybe other people accused of crimes have. And so there are certainly parts where you have to suspend your disbelief. It is fiction, but a lot of how the court scenes take place, investigations take place, the flow of information, that's actually really grounded in reality and how things actually work.
And then you bring in another character, and she is a public defender, and she and Siri kind of team up together. Why was it important for you to make sure that you centered this specific community and the cultural perspectives?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, New York City is a community of immigrants, and that's what makes it such a special place. I mean, every block there's different restaurants from different cultures, people speaking different languages. And growing up, I loved reading murder mysteries, but I never saw any that featured South Asian protagonists. And so I really wanted to highlight my culture, but also when I look around and I see a lot of cab drivers, they are individuals who look like me and reflect some of my lived experience. So it was really important to highlight them and the really valuable and important work that they do in keeping us safe and getting us, places late at night when maybe the subway doesn't feel like a great option. And so I really wanted this book to be, to honor immigrants and service workers who just do so much to keep New York City running.
One thing I thought was interesting in the book too is the humor in the book, because you really balanced it with some pretty, I think, heavy themes. I mean, things like racism and immigration, and then you have the threat of incarceration as well. When you started writing the book, did you really want to make sure there was some levity in it because the themes are pretty heavy?
I really did, because this line of work of representing people who are so vulnerable, who are in such difficult and challenging times in their life, it is really heartbreaking. And I always say, in this line of work, if I'm not laughing, I'm crying. And so I think it is important to be able to find a little bit of joy and a little bit of humor. Otherwise, this work just becomes so oppressive and impossible. And I think levity is important for all of us to just kind of keep going in these really difficult times. And so I really did want to write a book that taught readers something about the criminal legal system and made a very serious point about, people who are ensnared in the system. But I also wanted readers to be able to read a book that made them feel good and that kept them entertained and that felt kind of like a warm hug. And so it was a fine line to balance. And I hope I achieved that.
So I know this is your debut novel, but I've heard that this might become a series. So without giving too much away, I mean, what could you maybe tell us about where Siri might go next?
So I am delighted to say there will be a second book in the series. You get a preview of the first 3 chapters if you purchase a book, and it follows the same, some of the same characters. There is the same familiarity and humor and love of New York City. But of course, I wanted to present a new mystery that keeps readers guessing, that has twists and turns. And it really focuses on some of the really interesting historical aspects about New York City. So it really is some of the things that I hope people have loved from the first book, but with a fresh new mystery and spin. And hopefully people are guessing, what happens in the book to the very end.
What are you hoping folks take away from this first book?
Well, I hope that individuals take a love of, the very essential workers around us. I wrote part of this book while in the pandemic, and it made me think of all of those important people who are on the front lines, who are still out there. So I think an appreciation of that, but also an understanding that the criminal legal system doesn't always get it right. Again, as someone who represents innocent people who are serving time for crimes they didn't commit, it seems like such an inconceivable thought that how can the criminal legal system in the United States, this judicial system that we rely upon so much, how can it get it wrong? But it sometimes does. And so I really want people to check the assumptions that they make about people who are arrested. A lot of times people are wrongfully arrested because you narrow in immediately on someone and don't properly investigate. So I really want people to challenge their conceptions about the criminal legal system, especially when consuming things like true crime. Oftentimes, people who are charged with crimes are immediately, seen as, the wrongdoer when there's a lot more to the story. So I hope people take that away from the book as well.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk with us. We've been speaking with author Yosha Ganisakara about her debut novel, The Midnight Taxi. It's out now. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Thanks so much for listening. And just a reminder, you can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Terry Gross, host of Fresh Air. Hey, take a break from the 24-hour news cycle with us and listen to long-form interviews with your favorite authors, actors, filmmakers, comedians, and musicians, the people making the art that nourishes us and speaks to our times. So listen to the Fresh Air podcast from NPR and WHYY.